The war had ended, but peace was nowhere in sight. King's Landing still smelled of smoke. The Red Keep had survived Daenerys Targaryen's fire, but only barely. The Iron Throne was gone, melted into a pool of twisted metal and dust. Jon Snow had disappeared into the cold north, and Bran the Broken now ruled in name from a makeshift seat of power, while the nobles of Westeros quietly whispered about the boy king who couldn't walk or sire heirs. The realm was tired, wounded, leaderless in spirit, and in the shadows of history's chaos, two unlikely figures stood in a garden above the ruins. Sansa Stark, queen in the north, and Tyrion Lannister, disgraced hand-turned-prisoner, then survivor. Bound once in a political marriage neither wanted, separated by war, betrayal and blood, but now, reunited in the aftermath of ashes. "I never thought I'd miss the smell of wildfire," Tyrion muttered, fingers clasped behind his back as he glanced over the city below. "But compared to dragonfire, it's practically perfume." Sansa didn't laugh. She had stopped laughing a long time ago. "I came because there's no one else left," she said plainly. "You know that." Tyrion turned to her. "I hoped it was because you missed my charming company." "I didn't." Her voice was cold, but her eyes softened just slightly. Truth was, she had missed him. Not as a lover, not even quite as a friend, but as the last person who understood the pain of wearing a crown, not because you wanted it, but because you were the only one left to carry it. The small council had been rebuilt haphazardly. Davos, Brienne, Sam, a few lords here and there. All good people, all utterly useless at fixing a realm so broken it might have been better off burnt to cinders. Westeros didn't need honorable knights or maesters quoting histories. It needed pragmatists, survivors, people who knew how to navigate betrayal, ambition, hunger, and madness. People like Sansa and Tyrion. "We have 3 kingdoms at war over grain," Tyrion said, moving to the carved map table. "Dorne refuses to send any shipments. Without a royal guarantee, they'll be exempt from taxes. The Reach is still leaderless. The Riverlands, well, they're just burning themselves at this point. And the North won't give up its independence," Sansa added coolly. Tyrion sighed. "You realize that means 5 out of 7 kingdoms aren't actually following the crown. And Bran, well, he's more tree than king these days." Sansa raised an eyebrow. "You're suggesting what? That we rebuild it? You and I." "Why not?" Tyrion met her gaze. "You're already running the North better than any lord in Westeros. And I'm still clever, even if no one wants to admit it." She walked toward the window, her red hair catching the golden afternoon light. "You're drunk, only mildly." She was silent for a moment. "You think they'd follow us?" she asked at last. "A Stark girl and a Lannister dwarf? I think they'll follow stability. Peace, a future that doesn't include dragonfire or child kings. You and I, we've seen every kind of monster this realm has to offer. And we survived them." He stepped closer, voice lowering. "We were married once. Let's act like it again. Not lovers, partners, rulers." Sansa turned to face him, eyes narrowed. "You want us to take over the realm?" "No," Tyrion said. "I want us to save it." She didn't answer, but she didn't leave either. They spent the next few days in quiet talks. Tyrion drafted letters. Sansa rewrote half of them. He wanted to call a gathering of lords. She said no, better to visit each kingdom in person, show the people they weren't just more nobles playing at thrones. They would rebuild from the ground up, not from some castle chamber filled with old men. They would start in the Riverlands, then the Stormlands, then Dorne, no fanfare, just action. Tyrion had a plan, and Sansa had resolve, and Westeros, for the first time in a generation, had hope. But hope is a dangerous thing, and not everyone was ready to let go of the past. The Riverlands were dying. Once the green heart of Westeros, its rivers now ran thick with mud and forgotten blood. The Freys were gone, the twins abandoned like a rotting tooth in the mouth of the kingdom. Villages that once sang with harvest songs now echoed with the silence of fear. Bandits roamed freely, calling themselves loyalists to one house or another, but in truth they were just wolves in stolen armor. Sansa and Tyrion arrived quietly. No banners, no declarations, Just two travelers with a small escort, riding through lands that hadn't known true peace since before the Red Wedding. It was a calculated move. If we show up in golden carriages, we'll be robbed before we reach the inn, Tyrion had quipped. But Sansa knew the real reason. They needed to be seen as human, not royalty. Not relics of the last war, but people who cared. The first village they stopped at was called Hallowmere, a pitiful cluster of homes that looked like they'd been patched with hopes and prayers. Children stared at them with wide, hollow eyes. The local sept had been burned to the ground. No one even remembered why. Tyrion stepped into the inn, if it could be called that. A sagging wooden structure with broken chairs and no ale. He offered coin for bread. The innkeeper, a woman missing half her teeth, stared at him like he was mad. "Bread?" she scoffed. "We ain't had wheat since the Manderleys pulled out. All we got's barley soup and salted rats, my lord." Tyrion didn't flinch. "Then bring the soup, and boil the rats." "I'll take it." Sansa sat in silence as the villagers whispered. She didn't wear her crown. Her Stark brooch was hidden beneath her cloak. Still, they recognized her face. And not everyone was pleased. "That's the Northern Queen," a man spat near the door. "Took her kingdom and left the rest of us to starve." Tyrion stood quickly. "If you have something to say it to me. I'm the one who crowned Bran. I'm the one who stood beside the Dragon Queen. If you want to spit on someone, I'm shorter. Easier target." The room fell quiet. The man looked away. Later that night, as they camped outside the village, Sansa turned to him beside the fire. "You didn't need to defend me." "Yes, I did," he replied. "They don't trust you. Yet you're a Stark, and they remember the last time a Stark marched through the Riverlands. My father came here with honor, and he died with it too," Tyrion said softly. "We don't need honor right now. We need to feed them, heal them. Then they'll listen." The next morning they met with 3 local leaders, former minor lords who had survived by keeping their heads down. They were skeptical, bitter and tired. "What do you want from us?" one asked. "More taxes? More boys for your wars?" Sansa leaned forward, eyes sharp. "No, I want to rebuild your mills. I want to give you grain stores from the north. I want to send healers and blacksmiths. In return, I want you to stand up to the men calling themselves kings and rebels, bandits, thieves. I want you to take back your land." "Why now?" another man asked. "Where were you when we begged for help 3 years ago?" She didn't flinch. "I was a prisoner, then a survivor. Now I am a queen, and I will not rule over ash and ghosts," Tyrion added quietly. "You'll get no more broken promises from us. Only coin, and blood if it comes to that." By nightfall they had secured oaths, not of fealty, but of alliance. It wasn't the old way, but it was enough. They left behind supplies, sent word to Winterfell for more grain, and posted guards to train the villagers in defense. It was slow, painful, but it was a start. As they rode south toward the Stormlands, Tyrion turned to her. "You were brilliant back there. I spoke the truth." "Yes, but you made them believe it." Sansa gave him a rare, fleeting smile. "And you? You didn't even insult anyone." "I'm impressed," he smirked. "Restraint is the last refuge of a scoundrel." They shared a quiet laugh. For a moment it felt almost like peace. But the road ahead was long, and not everyone wanted peace. Unseen far behind them, riders moved through the night, sigils covered, blades sharp, orders whispered in dark tongues. Someone was watching the queen in the north, and the imp beside her. They were rebuilding a kingdom, but someone wanted it broken forever. They reached the Stormlands under a heavy sky. Thunder growled somewhere in the distance, as if the land itself remembered the fury of Robert Baratheon and wasn't quite ready to forget. The castle at Griffin's Roost loomed ahead, once held by Stannis, now little more than a haunted shell after years of neglect and siege. It was where their next meeting would take place, arranged quietly with Lord Caron, one of the few remaining Stormlords who hadn't declared himself a king in the chaos that followed the Dragon Queen's fall. As they approached, Sansa pulled her cloak tighter around her shoulders. "These people won't welcome me," she said, "because of your brother." "No," she answered, "because I'm not Robert." Tyrion looked ahead at the crumbling keep. "That's good. Robert was an idiot, But he was their idiot, she replied. He drank with them, fought beside them. They still think of him as a hero. And heroes, Tyrion said grimly, are the first excuse men find to ignore reason. Inside Griffin's roost, the mood was tense. Lord Caron, greying but still sharp-eyed, greeted them with guarded civility. His hall bore scars, broken banners, smashed stonework, scorch marks that whispered of past betrayals. "I thought you'd send a raven," he said dryly. "Not the Queen of the North and the Lannister who once served every mad monarch alive." Sansa didn't blink. "Ravens can lie. I prefer to speak plainly." Caron offered them seats at a table, stripped bare of formality. "Then speak, my lady. And you too, imp. Tell me why I shouldn't turn you both away." Tyrion leaned forward. "Because the Stormlands are dying. Your people need trade. They need roads. They need food. All things we can give you. And what do you want in return?" "Stability," Sansa said. "We're building a new alliance. Not ruled from a throne of melted swords, but led by those who can protect their own lands and help each other survive. You'd have a voice in this alliance, not a leash." Caron studied her for a long moment. "A council of equals, yes," Tyrion said. "A council that actually listens, not a boy king behind walls or a Targaryen with fire and madness in her blood." The Lord's eyes narrowed. "And what about the Reach, or the Vale, or Dorne? Will they listen, or will I find myself fighting yet another war for a cause that changes every 10 minutes? Sansa was ready. "We're already moving through the kingdoms. The Riverlands are in. The North is with us. The Vale will follow me. My cousin owes me his life. Dorne is still distant, but they'll deal when they see we offer no crown, just strength. And what of the Lannister name?" Caron turned to Tyrion with open disdain. "We still remember the sack of King's Landing. Your father's cruelty. Your sister's madness." Tyrion held his gaze. "And yet here I am, offering grain instead of swords, coin instead of chains. I didn't choose my name, my lord, but I've spent my life paying for it." There was silence. Then Caron nodded once. "You'll have my ships, and what little gold we still mine from the hills. But if this falls apart, if you make me regret it, you'll be the first to hang from my gates." Tyrion raised a brow. "It's a lovely gate. I'd be honored." That night, as the storm finally broke outside, Sansa stood on the balcony of her borrowed chamber, watching lightning streak the sky. Tyrion joined her holding 2 cups of wine. She took one, though she didn't drink. "That was too easy," she said softly. "Yes," Tyrion agreed. "He's scared. Of us? No, of what's coming." Sansa turned to him. "You felt it too?" Tyrion nodded. "Someone's moving in the dark, gathering strength. They don't want peace. They want chaos. The more we rebuild, the more we'll be a target." She looked out again into the storm. "Let them come." "Sansa!" "No," she said firmly. "Let them. Because we'll be ready." And they would be. But even as she spoke, ravens flew from the south, black wings in the rain, letters sealed with a broken lion's paw. An old banner, thought Lost. Tyrion would later curse himself for not seeing it sooner. The lion wasn't dead. Not entirely. And in the shadows of old Lannisport, someone was raising the red and gold once again. Not for justice, not for peace, but for vengeance. The letters arrived 3 days later. One was addressed to Sansa, the other to Tyrion. Both were sealed in crimson wax pressed with a lion's paw, not the proud sigil of House Lannister, but a distorted version of it. Warped, clawed, almost feral, Tyrion turned his over slowly in his hands, his jaw tight. "This isn't Cersei," he muttered. Sansa didn't reply. She had already broken the seal and was reading. The words were short, precise. "You betrayed your blood. You burned your sister. You'll answer for it. The lion rises again." There was no signature, but it didn't need one. The handwriting was unmistakable. Ser Geryon Lannister. Tyrion's uncle. A man thought long dead, vanished on a voyage to Valyria decades ago. But he'd survived, and now he was back. "He was always a shadow," Tyrion whispered, pacing. "No taste for court, no love for glory, just silence and steel. He hated my father more than anyone. Then why threaten you?" "Because to him I am my father now." Sansa placed her letter on the table. Her version was worse, colder, more pointed. You are the wolf who slept beside the lion. You are not fit to wear the crown you stole. The North will bleed next. Tyrion swore under his breath. He means to fracture the kingdoms before they unite. He wants the North to turn against me, Sansa said, voice flat. Make them think I've grown too close to the South again. And if they believe it? They won't, she said too quickly. Then after a moment quieter, not all of them. Tyrion looked at her then, not as a partner, not as a queen, but as a woman standing on a knife's edge. One wrong step and she'd fall. He had seen that look before. On Ned Stark, on Jon, even on Daenerys. The look of someone carrying more than they were meant to. They couldn't afford to falter now. We go to Lannisport, Tyrion said suddenly. Sansa turned sharply. What? He wants to stir the West. We cut him off. Lannisport is the key. If he controls it, he controls the gold, the trade routes, and the loyalty of half the old bannermen. Are you mad? She hissed. They'll kill you on sight. Then I'll die where I was born, he said, eyes sharp. But if we delay, he'll have the entire Westerlands behind him. He's not just a threat, Sansa, he's a symbol. The last lion, she stared at him, conflicted. Don't ask me to watch you die, Tyrion. I'm not, he said. I'm asking you to come with me, she blinked. To the Westerlands. To Lannisport, to the heart of enemy territory, to where the war is going to start, whether we show up or not. There was a long silence. And then, softly, if I go, I can't hide who I am. They'll see a Stark walking into their keep. Let them, he said. Let them see the wolf and the lion standing together. Not fighting, leading. She stared at him for a long moment. Then she nodded. Fine, but we ride at night. No banners, no trumpets. Tyrion smiled grimly, as subtle as always. 2 nights later, they crossed into the Westerlands under cover of darkness. The road to Lannisport was winding, treacherous, and filled with memories Tyrion had spent his life trying to forget. They passed the ruins of small towns, places stripped of coin and food by Gerian's growing army. Word spread fast. The true Lannister had returned, they said. A man of gold and vengeance, a lion with fire in his eyes. By the time they reached the outskirts of Lannisport, they were no longer just travelers. They were prey. A dozen horsemen intercepted them near the city gates, mercenaries dressed in crimson cloaks that mimicked the Lannister colors but bore no official markings. Their leader, a scarred man with a sharp grin, raised his hand. Well, well, he said. The runt returns. And with the Wolf Queen on his arm, Sansa didn't flinch. You'll lower your weapons, or you'll lose the hands that hold them. The man chuckled. Big words for someone so far from Winterfell. Tyrion raised a hand. We've come to speak with Gerion. Let us pass and no one dies. The mercenary leaned down, amused. Gerion doesn't want to talk. He wants your head. Tyrion smiled faintly. Then I'll give it to him. But not before I say what needs saying. The man hesitated. And that's when a second group emerged from the trees. Archers in dark cloaks, not bearing any sigils at all. One of them called out sharply, Let them through. The mercenary cursed under his breath and backed away. Tyrion and Sansa rode forward slowly, the gates of Lannisport creaking open ahead of them. They had made it. But peace had not. Inside, the city was boiling with unrest. Banners flapped in defiance. Steel rang in alleys. And at the center of it all, in the old Lannister estate, Sir Gerion waited, older, angrier, and not nearly as dead as they'd hoped. He was ready for war. And now so were they. Lannisport was no longer the golden jewel of the West. Once a thriving harbor of trade, song, and excess, the city had turned into a fortress under siege from within. Smoke drifted from chimneys that hadn't burned in years. The docks were barricaded. Armed men lined the rooftops. The streets were quiet, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but the sort that comes before something breaks. As Tyrion and Sansa rode through the gate, the people stared in silence. Some with curiosity, others with open hatred. Tyrion recognized the look. He'd seen it since birth. Pity, disgust, loathing. But this time there was something more in their eyes. Betrayal. He'd once been the richest man in Westeros. Now he was a traitor to his name, a ghost in his own city. Your uncle's done well, Sansa murmured beside him. Tyrion nodded grimly. He knows the West. knows how to speak to their fears. Gold is running dry, the mines are nearly tapped, and he's promising them the old days again. A lion's pride, revenge for Casterly Rock. They passed the ruins of what had once been a Lannister treasury office, now repainted with a bloody lion's head. It wasn't just rebellion. It was personal. A child threw a rock at them from a rooftop. It missed, but barely. The guards didn't react. Neither did Tyrion. Neither did Sansa. "This place is waiting to explode," she whispered. "Then let's light the right fuse," Tyrion replied. They were led to the old Lannister estate, once his father's prized estate outside Casterly Rock, now Gerionn's makeshift seat of power. The golden lions had been torn down from the gates. In their place stood iron ones, crude, raw. Inside, Gerion Lannister waited. He stood in the great hall beneath a massive banner of his own making, red fabric stitched with jagged gold, not polished, but harsh and angular. His hair was long and grey now, his face lined with the years, but his eyes were sharp, dangerous. "Brother's bastard," he said when he saw Tyrion. "Still crawling, I see." Tyrion dismounted slowly, removing his gloves. "Uncle, you look feral." "And you," Gerion sneered, "look like a man who lost everything and came crawling home." Sansa stepped forward, poised as ever. "We didn't come to beg." "No," Gerion said, his gaze drifting to her coldly. "You came to die." His soldiers closed in slightly, but didn't draw blades. "Not yet," Tyrion raised a hand. "You'll kill me." "In the halls of our family?" "Because I burned your sister's killer and left the rock to rot." Gerion's voice was bitter. "Because you chose her over your own. Because you let the North go. Because you let the crown fall into silence. Because you turned your back on the only name you ever had." "I turned my back on madness," Tyrion snapped. "And if you had been here, you would have seen it too. You think our name means something? It meant fear. We ruled through coin and cruelty. Now you want to raise it from the ashes like some kind of savior." He stepped closer. "You were a ghost, Gerion. Lost. You didn't see what this realm became, what it suffered. And now you want to lead it?" Gerion's eyes flickered. "Someone has to." Sansa spoke then, calm but commanding. "We're not here to fight. We're here to offer peace, trade, roads, a future. Not a war over dead names," Gerion laughed. "You think these people care about peace? They want what was stolen. They want gold, power, fear. You're too soft for the West, girl." Tyrion narrowed his eyes. "Then try and take it without us. See how long you last." A tense silence followed. Then Gerion raised his hand. His soldiers backed away. 3 days, he said coldly. 3 days in this city. Speak to who you will. Whisper your lies. When the sun sets on the 3rd, you leave. Or you die. Agreed, Tyrion said. As they were escorted to their quarters, Sansa whispered, "He's bluffing." Tyrion's voice was low. "He's not." That night, riots broke out near the market. Gerion's men cracked skulls. Fires lit the sky. The city was boiling. The lion was roaring. And the wolf and the imp had only 3 days to change its heart, or be devoured by it. The first day passed in whispers. Sansa and Tyrion kept their presence quiet, but word spread through Lannisport like wildfire in dry grass. The Queen of the North and the disgraced lion had returned, together. Some called it a last gasp of power. Others, a desperate play for survival. But in the taverns, among the dock workers and smiths, rumors began to stir. Maybe they weren't just ghosts of the old world. Maybe they came with something real. They spent the morning walking through the market square under guard, heads lowered, ears open. Tyrion spoke to a fishmonger whose crates were nearly empty. "Trade's choked," the man said bitterly. Gerion's banners scare off the river barges. No goods from the Reach, no grain from the south. He promises protection, but no one eats banners. Sansa handed the man a sealed parchment, an offer of a new trade route backed by northern grain and Riverland's timber. A promise of life in exchange for loyalty, not to a crown, but to peace. By midday, they met with the guild leaders in a former counting house converted into a war council room. Tyrion recognized most of the faces, old men and women once loyal to Tywin, now clinging to memories of golden days. You expect us to turn against Geryon? One of them scoffed. He reopened the forges. Gave us back coin, Sansa answered coolly. And how long before he bleeds you for it? He's one of us. Tyrion stepped forward. So was my father. He fed you wealth, and then sent your sons to die in his wars. You want to go back to that? The room went quiet. Gold doesn't feed the hungry, Tyrion added. We offer grain, steel, roads, safety. An old woman in the corner finally spoke. What you offer sounds good, Lord Tyrion. But words won't protect us when Geryon turns his sword on your promises. Sansa pulled a second scroll from her satchel. Then maybe this will. It was a map, hand-drawn, ink still fresh. It showed new shipping lanes from White Harbor to Lannisport, guarded by Northern and Riverlands fleets. Supply lines, naval escorts, mutual protection. Sign the pact, she said, and you'll have trade within the week. Refuse, and Geryon will tighten his grip until this city suffocates. They left the building with no answers, but behind them, the guilds began to talk. That night, Tyrion sat with a bottle of wine, staring at the flickering candle beside his bed. I thought returning would feel like vengeance, he said aloud, mostly to himself. But it just feels hollow. Sansa sat in the chair across from him, removing her boots slowly. Because you came back to fix what can't be undone. He looked at her tired. You think we're wasting our time? She didn't answer right away. Then softly, no, but I think we're being watched. He stiffened. Geryon? Maybe, or someone worse. She rose, walked to the window and opened the shutter just a crack. The streets below flickered with torchlight, but it wasn't just Geryon's soldiers moving anymore. There were cloaked figures slipping between alleys, watching, waiting. Sellswords? Tyrion asked. Too careful for sellswords, she said. Too quiet. They're coordinated. Tyrion rose, pacing now. We have 2 days left. 1, Sansa corrected. He said we leave before the sun sets on the 3rd. And if we don't? She turned to him. He'll try to kill us. Tyrion nodded slowly. Then we make tomorrow count. The 2nd day was bolder. They walked through the merchant harbor with heads high. They spoke publicly, offering protection and grain to every tradesman willing to defy Geryon. Some laughed, some listened. One man, a young dockhand, spat at Tyrion's feet. Your family ruined us. You think a sack of wheat fixes that? Tyrion looked at him and said plainly, No, but war will ruin you again. And this time, there won't be gold to dig you out. By sunset, they had 15 signatures from guild leaders. 2 minor lords pledged neutrality. A baker gave Sansa a single tear-stained loaf for the north, she whispered. But just as night fell, fire broke out in the eastern district. A grain warehouse, one marked with the Stark sigil, was burning. Sacks of food, set ablaze by someone who knew exactly where to strike. A message. Tyrion and Sansa stood watching the flames lick the sky, smoke thick in the air. He's striking back, Sansa said. He's showing them we can't protect them. Tyrion's hands clenched. We need to strike first. Sansa looked at him sharply. You mean war? I mean truth, he said. We need to bring him into the open, force him to answer for what he's done. She stared at the fire for a long moment. Then we make him answer tomorrow. The final day had begun, and the lion and the wolf would roar together, or not at all. Dawn broke over Lannisport like a warning. Smoke still curled from the blackened shell of the grain warehouse, though the fire had died in the night. The people woke to the smell of ash and silence. It wasn't just a building that had burned, it was hope, the promise of food, of change, now charred and crumbling like the kingdom itself. Sansa stood on a stone balcony overlooking the harbor, her eyes distant. They're afraid again, she said quietly. We were turning them. Then he reminded them what power looks like. Tyrion stood beside her, dressed not in traveller's clothes, but in Lannister red and gold, though darker, muted. Mourning colors. Then we remind them what courage looks like. She turned to him. You're serious? We hold a gathering, he said. Public, loud, no shadows. We put Geryon's name to the crimes. We lay it bare in the streets. Let the people see him for what he is. And if he answers with swords, then we bleed. Sansa looked at him, searching for doubt. Found none. You're risking your life, He offered her a crooked smile. Wouldn't be the first time. And I'd rather die trying to fix this place than live letting it rot. She nodded once. Then we speak at midday. Let the city gather. They chose the old Forum Square, a crumbling amphitheater once used for trade disputes and public speeches. Now it was half in ruin, weeds growing through the cracked marble, but it still had its voice. By noon, a crowd had gathered. Dock workers, miners, merchants, even a few soldiers, faces half-covered, curiosity burning behind their eyes. Whispers rose through the air as Tyrion climbed the steps of the dais. Sansa followed, her northern cloak trailing behind her like a banner. The noise quieted. Then Tyrion spoke, not as the Hand of Kings, not as a Lannister, but as a son of the West. "I was born beneath gold," he began, "in a castle carved into stone. I was fed from silver spoons, taught by old men who hated me, and raised by a father who wanted me dead." He paused. The crowd listened. "I was told my name meant power, that it was enough, that it would protect me, even when no one else would." He stepped forward. "But names don't feed the hungry. Gold doesn't rebuild burned homes, and power without justice is just tyranny with better wine." A few murmurs. "I have failed many times," Tyrion continued. "I've served mad queens, cowardly kings. I've stood beside monsters and done nothing. But not today." He raised a parchment in his hand. "This is a pact. A real one. Trade routes, grain shipments, protection, justice, no more broken oaths. No more empty crowns. No more lions feeding on the weak." He turned to the crowd. "You want pride? Take it back yourselves. Not with fire and fear, but with choice. With unity. Geryon Lannister offers you a war. We offer you a future." Gasps rose suddenly from the crowd. Sansa turned. Geryon was there. Flanked by his men, he walked into the square with steel in his hands and murder in his eyes. His cloak was lined with red wolf fur, a mockery. He stepped forward. "So this is what you've become," Geryon spat. "A court jester for wolves." Tyrion met him head-on. "No, this is what you've become. A parasite clinging to a name you never earned." Geryon's blade flashed out. The crowd gasped. Soldiers tensed, but Tyrion didn't flinch. "I'm unarmed," Tyrion said. "Strike me now and they'll see the truth." Geryon's hand twitched. Then Sansa stepped forward, voice clear and sharp as glass. "You want to fight, Geryon? Then fight the truth. You burned food meant for children. You killed your own. You've sold your name to sellswords and fear." Her eyes swept the crowd. "You think this man will save you? He'll use you, bleed you, until there's nothing left but banners and bones." For a moment Geryon looked uncertain. Then a cry rang out. From the edge of the square, a group of merchants raised a banner. Not a lion, not a wolf, but a new sigil, a sun rising over a cracked crown. The crowd turned. More joined. Voices rose. "Peace? Trade? Justice?" Geryon growled, stepping back. "You've poisoned them." "No," Tyrion said softly. "We gave them a choice." Geryon turned, shoving through his men. His power was cracking, and he knew it. The crowd surged towards Sansa and Tyrion, not in anger, but with hands outstretched, seeking answers, offering allegiance. The rebellion had begun, but it wasn't Geryon's anymore. It was theirs. They didn't sleep that night, not because of fear, but because the city had finally awakened. Voices echoed through Lannisport until dawn. People gathered in taverns, in alleyways, on rooftops. They weren't just whispering anymore. They were organizing. Guild leaders took to the streets, flanked by northern guards and Riverlands tradesmen, securing the Forum and warehouse districts. Makeshift patrols formed from merchants and sailors who once kept quiet out of fear. Now they carried blades and hope. Geryon hadn't vanished, but he had retreated. His men still held the old Lannister estate and the Western Gate, but he no longer walked the streets like a king. The moment he turned away from the crowd, he lost the city. Tyrion stood at a window of the council chamber, watching the harbor light up with early trade barges. "He'll try something," Sansa said behind him, her voice steady. "A final move. Something desperate." Tyrion nodded. "He has no other kind left." Word came before midday. Geryon had fled the estate and was rallying his remaining forces along the coastal cliffs. Fewer than 200 swords, most of them mercenaries, all paid with gold that was running out. "He's headed for Casterly Rock," one scout reported. "Says he'll reclaim it in the name of the Lion." Tyrion turned to Sansa. "Then we meet him there." Sansa raised a brow. "You want to chase him into the rock?" "I want to finish what our father started," he said coldly. "With truth, not fear." Casterly Rock loomed ahead like a beast sleeping beside the sea. Its carved lion's maw still marked the entrance, though vines now clung to its golden mane. The fortress had stood empty for years. Picked clean, forgotten, a monument to power that had lost its teeth. Gerion's men had taken the outer hall. Fires burned along the ledge. Sentries watched from above. But they weren't prepared for what followed. Sansa and Tyrion marched at the head of a combined force, 200 Riverlands archers, a dozen northern shield maidens, and Lannisport's own rebellion, dockhands with stolen spears and determination in their eyes. They didn't attack. They stood outside the gates, banners raised, and they waited. It wasn't about blood. It was about choice. Inside, Geryon paced like a caged lion. His commanders whispered warnings. Some were already deserting, slipping away under the cover of night. Finally, as the sun dipped toward the sea, the gates opened. Geryon stepped out alone. He wore old armor, Tywin's polished and cracked. It hung on him like a memory. "You came to destroy the last of us," he said. "No," Tyrion replied. "We came to prove we were better." Geryon looked at Sansa, eyes bitter. "The North will never rule the West." Sansa stepped forward. "We don't want to rule it. We want to save it. You've twisted this rebellion into something hollow." He laughed. "And you've twisted Tyrion into a dog. Better a dog than a dying lion chasing ghosts." There was a long silence. Geryon drew his sword and dropped it at their feet. The sound echoed through the canyon walls. "I won't kneel," he said. "You don't need to," Tyrion replied. "Just leave." And he did. Without ceremony, without a final roar. Just a man walking into exile, forgotten by the world he tried to control. Weeks later, Casterly Rock stood rebuilt, not as a castle of war, but as a council hall. The first gathering of the new Westerosi alliance was held beneath the stone lions, their mouths closed at last. Sansa sat beside Tyrion at the long table. Davos from the Stormlands, Lord Glover from the north, Master Samwell from Oldtown. Even emissaries from Dawn and the Vale arrived, curious. They didn't speak of crowns, or dragons, or thrones. They spoke of ships, and harvests, and how to keep the peace this time. As the meeting ended, Sansa stepped out onto the balcony overlooking the sea. Tyrion joined her, as he always did. "We did it," he said softly. "For now," she replied. He chuckled. "You never let me enjoy the moment, do you?" She smiled faintly. "You enjoy it enough for both of us." They stood there in silence, two survivors of the old world looking out over the new. "I used to think no one would follow a Stark and a Lannister," she said. "And yet here they are," he replied, "following us into something that might just last." Sansa turned to him. "This alliance, it needs more than trade. It needs memory, to remember what broke us." He nodded. "And what saved us?" She looked back to the sea. The wind caught her hair, carrying the salt and the future. They weren't queen in hand, not anymore. They were builders, of a realm without thrones, of a kingdom made of choices, not chains, of a future that would never forget the fire, but would never be ruled by it again.